What is going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning into today's video. Like always, I'm really excited. So today I want to talk to you guys a little bit more about the reasons that I got fired from my first 2 junior developer jobs. I know that there's a lot of people that have gone through coding boot camps and they've turned out a lot better than I have. I also know that there's a lot of students that have gone through coding boot camps and they've turned out a lot worse than I have. I just want to share with you guys my experience. Hopefully it'll be useful for some of you guys and it'll help some of you avoid the pitfalls that I personally fell into. So a quick summary about me. My name is Joe. I spontaneously signed up for a coding boot camp about 2 years ago. I didn't have a computer until just a few days before class began. I was definitely one of the worst students rather than one of the better students, but I decided to go anyway because I was desperate to find something to do with my life, and coding seemed like a good idea. So I went ahead, I gave it a shot, I got my ass kicked, but I definitely learned a lot, and it's been worth it overall. So anyway, let me give you guys a breakdown of what happened to me. So starting with my first job, let's start there. Number 1, this job was handed to me. Essentially, I didn't apply for this job through like Indeed. Having a job handed to you is something I do not recommend. Number 2, I wouldn't be working on a team at this job, which turned out to be a huge problem. Number 3, my first job, I was working for a non-tech company, if that makes any sense. Basically, this job was, like I said, this job was handed to me by a cousin. He has the same last name as me, so you guys can consider it a family business, I guess. They needed somebody to help them set up a dashboard that basically was pulling data to display in graphs and charts. And they used a specific software to display these graphs and charts. And so my cousin was talking about it. He's like, yeah, all we need is someone that knows basic JavaScript and SQL. And I was like, hell yeah, I'm your guy. I just went through a coding boot camp that taught me that. I'll do it for you. Turned out to be a disaster. No mentorship, no help, nobody within this massive building to ask a simple coding question to. 80% of this company is like warehouse work, and I was just on the really small operations side. So nothing I did, nothing was React or Angular or no frameworks, nothing that I learned from my coding bootcamp I did at this first job. And I kind of expected that. That's what I was taught, but this was different. Now the thing is, there's a lot that can be done with computer code, and there's only so much that you can learn from a coding bootcamp. What I got myself into was not a good job for somebody with so little experience. I definitely needed a mentor. I needed to work on a team. I needed just somebody around me that I could just talk code with. And that's something I didn't have at this job. Sure, I think that I could have figured it out if I had more help. Sure, there are other students out there. There's people that went to my class that they probably could have done this job. The thing is, I just wasn't one of them. I struggled with it. I'd say I got like 80% done with it, but bringing down the last 20%, it was beyond me. It was beyond my skill level. And the company just kind of realized that, maybe this dashboard is not important. Let him go. So off I went. So the moral of this particular story is be careful about the first job that you get directly out of a coding bootcamp. I highly recommend that you stick with something similar to what you learned through the coding bootcamp, which is most likely something web related. Regardless of what you're doing, I highly recommend you get yourself a job where you're gonna find a mentor. So that was my first job. I feel like I hardly learned anything from that job, and everything that I learned from my coding bootcamp felt like it was just kind of slowly starting to fade away as I was trying to learn this software to do all these graphs and charts. I don't know. I was stoked that I got a job, but it did a lot more damage than good, if I'm being honest with myself. So you'd think that I would have learned my lesson based off of what happened to me in my first job, but unfortunately my second job is kind of the same thing. Once again, this job was basically handed to me. I didn't apply for it. Again, I do not recommend this. Number 2, I kind of lied on my resume, I'll be honest. The guy that was hiring me, he knew that I lied on my resume, so we thought it was going to be okay. We thought we'd kind of be able to work through it. Now, this was for a senior full stack position. Basically, 4 years of JavaScript experience, 4 years of Linux experience, 4 years of server management experience, 4 years of SQL. Nothing within the job description I qualified for. There was also a handful of things within the job description that I needed 3 or 4 years worth of experience with that I didn't even know what it was. But I talked with the guy. He's like, you know what? I'll hire you anyways. Like, I think we're going to be able to work through this. The third thing that was wrong with this job is it was like my previous job. I'm going to be working on a small team. My last job, I was just a one-man show, which was a huge problem. Now with this one, at least I had a boss, but honestly, it was just me and him. There was one senior level engineer and then one junior level engineer who was me. Basically, the job description said that you're going to need to work independently, you're going to need to be able to finish your tasks with very little help. Those should have been red flags right there, because clearly I needed help, but I was desperate for a job, so I was honestly willing to take anything I could get. Like I said, this job, again, it was handed to me, and it ended up being a bigger disaster than my first job. I accidentally erased all of the files for one of our web pages. Luckily, it wasn't live at the time, but still, it was a huge disaster because we didn't use Git, which should be another huge red flag. If you're familiar with code, you should, or at least even just code, web design, you should use Git. We didn't. We only used FTP file transfer, so it took like 8 hours to upload a single file, and nothing that I would write on code would reflect live in the browser like it does with React, or even with just simply refreshing an HTML page. I would write code, take an hour to upload it. If it didn't work, then I'd have to go through. It just, honestly, it was a mess, and there would be days in between me even talking with my boss. Sometimes like 3 or 4 days would go without us even talking, and he was like 3 times my age, so it kind of felt like there was this little bit of disconnect almost. I personally felt like we were designing and building websites that looked like they were from 1997, and everything that I felt like we were using was so old and outdated and looked old. Nothing that I learned from my coding bootcamp was even in sight of what we were doing. But I couldn't say anything to him because he's my boss. He's been doing this longer than I've even been alive. And I'm just a junior developer that failed my way through a coding bootcamp. So like, what do I have to say to him? I remember I made a post on Reddit kind of laying out my job, trying to get some feedback from some people shortly after I started. And I'll never forget, I had to actually delete the post after like an hour or two because it was just blowing up, and so many people were like, get the hell out of that job, like you don't do this, you use FTP, you don't use GitHub, you don't do this. Like, there were so many red flags. Everyone was like, get out of that job, like go find a job where you're gonna learn. And I should have listened, but the pay was good. I was desperate for a job, and so I just stuck it out for as long as I could, and it ended up not really being worth it, I'll be honest. Now, the final straw for me at that job was when my boss left for a 7-day vacation, and basically he like switched servers like the night before he left and sent me login credentials that didn't work. And he said he didn't have service for 7 days. I couldn't get into the server. I really don't know shit about server management, I'll be honest. And so when he got back and realized I didn't do anything for a week, he let me go. Which, I don't blame him, I'll be honest. I probably would have let me go too. But I couldn't get into the server, passwords never worked. It was not a good time, to say the least. I'm glad to be out. It was something. It was good, it was fun, a good experience, a bad experience, I don't even know. I got fired, so take that for what you will. So there you guys go. There is my list of excuses on why I got fired from my first 2 junior developer jobs. Trust me, I've thought it over a million times. I know there's a lot of things that I could have done differently to change my results. But hey, you know, now you guys know, and honestly that's what's most important. I hope you guys learned something, or you guys will take away something from this video, or at least it was enjoyable. So if anything I've said has been beneficial to you guys, go ahead, leave a like down below, consider subscribing to my channel. I apologize that my videos are not always that good. They're slowly but surely getting a little bit better. I am simultaneously trying to learn lighting and camera and video editing while trying to launch a website or a web design business, freelance, find clients, charge clients. I'm just trying to document this whole process. So thank you guys again for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next video.
Can you say hi, kitty? Can you say hi to the camera, kitty?